Welcome to episode 17 of All the Horrible Things. We're going to be talking about a new Apple TV show. I mean, relatively new. It started this spring, I guess. Late winter, early spring.
Mm-hmm.
Severance. Not to be confused with the film Severance, which we talked about in episode 1.
Yeah, we did.
This is the TV show starring a prestigious cast.
Seriously, all the way up to the director.
Yeah, Ben Stiller, who's one of my favorite directors. Granted, I haven't seen the show he did, I think it was Apple TV or HBO before this, about the prison.
Yeah.
Did you watch that one?
I haven't seen it, but it was like award-winning. It's an award-winning show.
It was. But that one I know was a one-off. That's a miniseries. Severance is meant for multiple seasons. In fact, I was reading something with the creator, Dan Erickson, and he says it can either go 3 or 6, depending on its popularity. He has ideas for it to be a 3-season show or a 6-season show.
That's
and
impressive.
I'm rooting for 6. 6 in a movie.
That's impressive to know as a writer to be like, I've got more story to tell, but I could easily just turn it off at 3.
Yeah, and it's kind of exciting because he wrote the first pilot for it back in 2013. So we're talking almost a decade before it was actually produced. And he'd shown it to many other people before Stiller started shopping it around for him because he liked it so much. And he was turned down by every studio except Apple TV.
And what a fascinating idea it is.
It is. Honest to goodness, since Station 11, this is my favorite new show out there.
Yeah, same.
I mean, Station 11, again, was a miniseries as well. That was on HBO, this last Christmas time zone. But this, knowing it's got future seasons and a cast that kicks so much ass, I think it's officially my favorite show.
And I think this is probably a good point to say that there will be spoiler talk in this.
Oh, yes. There's going to be plenty of spoilers because the finale was amazing. They didn't leave you with ridiculous cliffhangers. They gave you a taste of what could happen in this next season in a way that I feel like a lot of shows wouldn't have.
Absolutely.
But this does give you a payoff. But why is it horror? Why are we talking about Severance on All the Horrible Things beyond our just adoration of it?
Well, I think for starters, there's this underlying question of what are they doing? Like, what type of work are they doing? Because if it's so secretive, where they spin this idea, they've got this procedure, if you will, to separate your work life from your personal life. And they make it seem like it's something that we're doing for your own benefit, right?
Right.
Ultimately, though, I think it's to protect what they're doing down there. The company, the board, who you never see but hear, is probably, it's in their best interest to keep whatever they're doing down there bottled up.
I think that's a strong possibility that it could be the secretive nature of it. But at the same time, I think there's the possibility that Lumen is selling Severance and doesn't do anything, and that these characters in the MDR, the data refinement agency, and then you got those in the creative, where Christopher Walken's character works, where he's designing and being a creative optics dude. It's proof. It's proof of concept, and the product itself is the Severance that can then be outsourced to any other outlet, including there's a very strange episode where our two mains, Mark and Helly, played by Adam Scott, and I sadly don't remember her name, but they stumble upon a wing of Lumen, this underground facility, where there's just a room full of goats.
Yeah.
Just strange room full of goats being fed by this dude. I think that's proving that you can create agricultural workers that can be severed. You got the creative workers that can be severed. Their product is proving efficiency in severing one's outside life from their work life.
That's interesting.
And if you remember, when Mark first starts working there, they reference it very briefly. He does the Allentown file really quickly. He's able to find these scary numbers because essentially in MDR, they are asked to essentially sort through this grid, this matrix of numbers, and find ones that look scary, which is so ambiguous. But what's strange, though, is if they get it wrong, if they pick the wrong number, the system knows that. So how would it know that? So to me, this is meaningless work, and it's all about showing that they can make these workers who aren't thinking about their outside lives more efficient to then pass that on to other companies
I mean,
to
that's
push the Severance itself, not any product within the Severance.
yeah. No. It's an excellent theory.
Because what would they be hiding? What are some
Well,
ideas, like what would they be doing?
I don't 100% have an answer to that just yet, but I would say the most, I don't know, confusing part, if we're going with your theory here, is the character Petey who breaks free.
Right.
But he's
reintegrates.
concerned. Yeah, but I think it's because he is concerned or has some sort of idea as to what's going on down there. Maybe to then justify it with your point, and maybe he's just scared that everybody else will go through with this.
Right. I mean, it's essentially creating slaves, bringing slavery back into humanity in a way that might be considered acceptable because you're not feeling the pain. But at the same time, that's where the philosophical nature of the show really kicks in, because are they the same person if the innies cannot remember the outies in their lives? Are these two different people, or are they the same person just because they're housed by the same vessel, the same body?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess to your point, for productivity, it would sort of explain why they're working on these very old computers where they're probably not connected to the internet. There's not distractions built in.
Exactly. I think it's the intranet. And even when they're given like accolades or rewards, it's like either a 3D picture of themselves or they get the picture of their group of 4 that they work with in their department.
Or a Chinese finger trap.
Or a Chinese finger trap. Yes, let's talk about that, because ultimately, if they are 2 separate people that are doing these really inane jobs, and like you said, the setting itself, I think, is set up to make them calm, to really kind of keep any sort of distractions away. We're talking about what are essentially like teenagers or even prepubescents. They have a certain understanding of life and how to function and to communicate, but they haven't experienced sex or music or melons, apparently, the melon parties, these inane little celebrations that they have. It would be so patronizing to, somebody with experience in the real world, but for them, it's so novel that they can't help but get excited about an MDE. What is it? The dance experience.
Yeah, that was something to watch. Not to jump too far ahead, though, but the waffle party.
The waffle party
is not just a waffle party.
No. So ultimately, for hitting their goal, Mark, he's been bestowed the role of the leader after his best buddy Petey disappears. We find out later that he's reintegrated. So his Indian outies are bleeding in together, and he's working against Lumen, the company. Well, Mark then takes over, and him and his crew are able to set a goal and make that goal, and he gets to choose who gets a waffle party. And the waffle party is essentially the perk. But it's not just a waffle party.
Right.
There's waffles.
I mean, yeah, he does eat the waffles.
So my favorite character of the 4 probably is this Dylan.
Dylan is great.
This kind of aggressive nerdy character who is the first one to experience the outside world.
Right, when they go into overtime, right?
As they go into the overtime protocol. Absolutely. So he's seen it. So they take advantage of the fact that he gets this waffle party, which is after hours, and it's set up in the originators, the creator of Lumens and Severance, Kier, this Kier character. There's such lore and mystery, mythology behind this whole Kier business. But he goes into his home, which I guess the whole building has been built around his childhood home. Or did you get the sense that it was like transported there?
I think they recreated it, but
it was a recreation.
I think so, but you know what? As extreme as everything is down there, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought his actual home.
Yeah, I think it's possible either way. But ultimately, they allow him to go have this waffle experience within this recreation, or the home of Kier, home of the founder. And he gets to slowly eat his stack of waffles, which he seems to enjoy, gets a syrup on it. And honestly, we don't see these characters eat very much at all, because their outies are the kind of ones filling their belly for the most part, probably having breakfast and dinner. They get lunch, I guess. And then these like reward food experiences. But after the waffle party, he's brought to Kier's bed and given a show of an erotic and very esoteric nature.
Yeah, with the masks, the giant masks.
The giant masks. And I did some research here on Reddit, and there's theories out there about what the hell's going on with these masks. Because, as we discussed, they've never experienced sex. So my initial theory was, okay, this is a way to kind of almost like pervert sex and make it something that since their innies have never experienced it, is something that's too odd and strange and ununderstandable for them to not want to think about it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You just had a waffle party, you're overloaded. Oh, that was good. I'll be content with food. And then you're given this strange erotic dance by four figures in the four masks were, there's a sad bride mask, the crone mask, like a gray-haired mask, and then there's a jester mask and a ram mask. Well, on Reddit, there was one poster who suggested that these four masks represent the personalities in MDR.
Oh.
So the sad bride mask represents Mark, who lost his wife, whose wife has supposedly been killed in a car accident that he is responsible for. The dread / the old mask is Irving, our John Turturro character, who is kind of dreading old age, and he's the one that's like he's the closest to death.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one that has these hallucinations about the black slime. So that might be Irving. And then the frolicking mask, the jester mask, might be Helly, or even Petey, who proceeds. Petey preceded Helly, and the jester mask is always trying to find ways to escape, likes to have fun, and is kind of the trickster character. Because as we find out later, Helly is actually a Kier. She has severed herself, and her inner self hates being part of this company, even though she is a descendant of the creator. And then finally, Dylan representing the ram mask, because he's kind of the most obstinate. He's insulting people left and right, absolutely hates other departments, and is eventually the most motivated to break out of Lumen.
Yeah, he also
may be a Futuro.
He also bit Milkchick.
Milkchick. Yeah.
Which was great.
It was pretty great. Milkchick had it coming.
Those are really well thought out descriptions of those masks. When I was watching it, I've only seen that scene once. I imagine if I was to rewatch that scene, I could pull some more information out of it. But I think my first thought was one of them's got to be Kier. You know, the older one was Kier. Like, you get to be closer to your this quote unquote leader god type figure in this organization. But I like these descriptions.
The analogs do make sense.
Yeah,
I could see them.
Yes, they do.
But I can't help but going with my initial instinct. It's like just to kind of like steer him away from having sexual thoughts.
Right.
You know, keeping their mind on the work and making any sort of erotic experience so foreign and bizarre that they could not actually be turned on by that.
One of my other thoughts, though, while this is being set up, is that who are these people? Are they brought in from the outside? Are they other employees? Are they a different team? You know, like a different department within this company? Like, that's sad and scary too.
It is. That's one of the big questions: is how many different departments are there? And then big questions like, are there innies that are always innies?
Right.
They never go out, that are always stuck there. Because as we find out, big reveal here, Mark's wife is actually alive. She's alive. That's one of the big reveals at the end. And she turns out to be the figure that is essentially the one that reaffirms them. She's kind of like a psychologist of sorts. And when they do something good, they get to go hang out with her, and she tells them about their outie.
Which is
like,
to me, it seemed like just fake generic stuff. But how much do you think of that? The list she's rattling off is real?
I don't think any of it's probably real.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I mean, they're so vague in general that maybe some are, but I think it's just to kind of keep them motivated and be like, okay, I'm doing this for the greater cause. Right. You know, in a sense, their outie is almost like a god analog. You know, it's like that is the one that, and Helly does a great job of kind of like proving that when Helly R tries to escape or kill herself. Even Helly E really lays down the law. It's like, you are working for me. You are secondary to me, so authoritatively that in a way they are kind of subjugated to themselves in such a profound way.
You mentioned the Black Ooze, which I think is like the first time when you're first watching the series in episode 1, it might be the first horrific type element that's actually visually shown, because you're thinking, what is going on? Is this brain melting? Is something literally seeping in from the outside? Is it the paint? Right.
Is it the paint?
Is it the paint? Because we also see when he's home,
Irving's outie is obsessed with painting the same image over and over again in different shapes too. Right. Slight variations, but ultimately the same black corridor leading to the door that we don't see until the finale, which essentially to me seems like the decommission door, because it's explicated that the woman who we thought was dead, Mark's dead wife, who is alive, she's being fired, if you will, but she doesn't have an outie life that we're aware of to go back to.
Right.
So she's sent down this corridor that Irving keeps drawing over and over again. And to me, it felt like she was going into, like, if you're familiar with Westworld,
yes,
when they turn off the robots.
That's exactly what I pictured. They don't do anything.
Maybe
they just turn off and they're just stored like in a warehouse.
Exactly.
A naked warehouse.
So then, I mean, if you remember, there's the which protocol? What was it called? When overtime protocol, where they can turn them on when they're outside. But there was a bunch of other protocols that were given a little hint at when Dylan is, doing this for them, is working his Master Mission Impossible plan there at the end, where he's got to hold 2 levers.
I felt so bad
agile
for him.
of all the 4 characters to do it. But there's other ones like Glasgow, which I know there's like this Glasgow states of consciousness academic stuff out there. I mean, ultimately the show is about consciousness, which I think is one of the biggest mysteries out there, which to me is part of why it makes it horror, is because no one has a definitive sense or answer to what consciousness is. And most of what humanity leans towards seems to be theological in nature.
Right.
But this show, I think, really is playing with whether or not there's infinite us in us, which gets to the idea of Rickon, which is Mark's brother-in-law's book, which is titled The You Are.
What a great character. At first, when you're first introduced to him, you're like, oh no, this guy's annoying. And you grow to like him over the span of the series.
Very pretentious, terrible writer, which makes it so strange that he has such the following that he does have.
Yes. Which
because
is
his
also
book apparently is doing well.
But don't you think it's also a very cult-like?
Very cult-like, which brings me to other theories on there that Rickon is actually an innie on the loose in the outside world, as are his followers.
Oh, interesting.
So that he was kind of designed to be part of Mark's life, or he could potentially even be a Keir, which brings us into another huge theory online that I think has a lot of weight. That Miss Cobell, played by Patricia Arquette, is also a Keir, but a bastard Keir. Not like Helly, who we find out is the actual descendant of the Keir family in a legitimate way. But Cobell, because she doesn't have the clout, she has kind of like, I mean, it's a good job, but it's not that great. In the way that she worships the Keirs on the outside and works for them so diligently on the inside, and then gets so mad at Helly at the end. To me, this is like the bastard child, who is being kind of tossed aside there at the end, even though she's more devoted to the cause of Lumen than Helly, who tries to kill herself. Helly R, rather.
What I thought was interesting about Cobell is that she doesn't appear to be severed.
I don't think she's severed.
But she has 2 identities.
But I think Miss Selvig, who's the neighbor on the outside world to Mark, is her idea of what a middle-aged woman living next door would be, because it's almost a little over the top, a little ridiculous. It's almost like she's putting on a part. It's a brilliant move
the
by
cookies.
Yes, exactly. Just the whole garbage pail debacle.
Yeah.
Whose garbage pail goes where? It's just it's a
Mark.
hyperbolic version of the Snoopy next door middle-aged woman
Now, why do
who's
you
lost her
think
husband.
she has so much interest in Mark and she has moved next to him with this character?
I think Mark is a bigger figure than any of us know at this point, because I do think if Rickon is part of the Kier family and Cobell is potentially also a bastard child of Kier, and we have his wife who's now essentially a puppet of Kier, even though Mark thinks she's dead on the outside. They mentioned very briefly the Allentown file. When he starts at Lumen, he's able to find the scary numbers in an efficient way that changes the way everyone does the work at MDR. So I think there is something special about Mark that makes her want to monitor him, that he's got some sort of, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's where it's a mystery.
It's very interesting, and so much so as to have Mrs. Selvig working with Mark's sister, with the latching, so much so as to bring in Mark's quote unquote dead wife, all to seem like a test, just to see if like the severing actually works. Like you don't even recognize your own wife in this world.
Selvig was so cruel to her, Cobell rather,
right,
in the office, because she makes Mark sit down with her in the peace room, or whatever the name of the nice room is, not the break room, where
not
you're
the break
indoctrinated
room.
and
which is the most horrific thing about this series.
Yeah, the same horrible crap over and over again. But on the day that they are decommissioning, Hema is her name. He's the one that is there when she's realized, oh, I've been fired. So she's realizing in that moment, I'm about to die, essentially, because that version of her is about to die for all intents and purposes.
Right.
Hema inside, I can't remember her actual name in Lumen, Miss Riley or Kaylee or something.
Yeah.
She is about to be, snuffed out, and she doesn't have any sense that she has an outie. And that's even when she's walking down that corridor that Irving keeps painting over and over again. She's like, is my outie a good person? Is this going to be okay, sort of thing? And Milachek's like, everything's going to be fine. Let's talk about Milachek for a second, because I don't think Selvig / Cobell has been severed. But what is Milachek's deal? Has he been severed? What the hell is going on with this character? Because he's like a huge fan favorite.
He's a fan favorite. He seems to me like the most likely to be the innie who's only an innie. Like he is only in this world, like you had alluded to earlier, because I don't think even when he needs to connect with Dylan on the outside, they use the overtime protocol.
Right. Yeah, and he's still himself on the outside as he is in the inside.
Full-time innie.
Granted, so was the security guy.
Right, but he leaves off site, and we see him,
and he doesn't change at all either. So so they could either be innies all the time, or they could just be these indoctrinated folks for Kier, working for Kier, for the greater good. And as we kind of talk to the top here, the greater good, what does that represent? And I want to talk more about potential Irving theories that are out there, and how Irving is the only one that's trying to communicate with his innie.
Right, which we learn about in the trunk.
Through the trunk, right? So he has information about the people that he's working with in the trunk. And then he keeps painting the same image of essentially what I'm assuming is like the gateway to death, metaphoric death,
right?
The decommissioning room. But is it possible? Why? Trying to theorize what would be the reason that he's trying to communicate with himself, or why did it get severed to begin with? The theory out there that I like the most is that Lumen initially did trials with soldiers to sever soldiers.
Yeah,
and
maybe
that
to
his
deal with
dad,
PTSD or something.
exactly, maybe his dad was a severed soldier and died because he was so not trained well enough, because they wanted to have these soldiers that weren't scared. There was nothing to lose for them, so they were just going to go in there. So that sort of backstory involving like maybe his family was used by Lumen for their own devices, and I honestly think that's where their money would be made too, right? If you think about where does the government spend their money, it is defense. So I think Severance, if it's not selling Severance to all industry, specifically, they can make the most money selling Severance to the government's armed services, because then you have an army of robots, And that's why it definitely could be secretive in itself too, because imagine the outrage when you're sending people into war who don't remember their family.
Yeah, it's going to make them a lot more dedicated and committed to the cause. Maybe that is the cause. I like that theory a lot.
And the way he's trying to communicate with himself by staying awake all night painting too. When does Irving get any sleep? He gets it at work, and then he gets shit for it at work. So he's the only one that seems to be conscious of how it works inside and outside. So he has to have some sort of deeper connection to it.
Yeah, that's really good. I was kind of wondering, like, where does this? I mean, we see his Navy stuff in the trunk.
Yes, exactly, the Navy stuff. But there is also another suggestion that he is the only one of them that has been severed twice. Ooh. So there's potentially 3 Irvings that we're dealing with.
I like that too.
There's something going on there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many moving parts in this show. It just like keeps you guessing. A lot of people have compared it to Lost as kind of these 2 different aspects of one person. You're getting to see them in 2 different environments.
Right.
And the mystery that overhangs it all. I think that's pretty accurate comparison. Granted, I think the show is much more well done, and we have the luxury of not having to watch commercials. That helps a lot too.
It sure does. Commercials can ruin momentum.
I want to ask you personally, is there any point in your life that you would want to not have lived through, that you would have severed given the opportunity?
Oh man, that is a great question. I don't think so. Not me personally. I think I might be in the category of people who believes in those moments. Kind of, they make you up. Trying to forget about something is incredibly dangerous. Or pushing it away, and so no, I don't think so. I mean, I kind of feel severed when I lived in LA for a bit.
No, that's a good point.
It just felt like a different
world. You really
world.
feel disconnected. It's hard to like see your family in the same light almost because you're so far and have different purpose, and
especially coming from an area in the suburb, like the Midwest, where you've got 4 seasons, and you go to LA and it's 1 season pretty much. I know they've got their rainy season.
It is like living a different life entirely.
Yeah.
The 2 settings are so disparate. I could see that. I don't know. As a kid, all I remember when my parents dragged me to, or my mom more specifically, dragged me to church, in my head, I would try to sever that hour.
That's a good
every
point.
Sunday. I would be like, I need to fast forward to the point where I would memorize like episodes of The Simpsons or Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and I just replay those in my head.
Parker Lewis.
While the priest was giving his sermon.
The priest was Kubiak.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good point. I was someone who really tried to fight against going to church and CCD.
Oh my gosh, CCD is another good example of where I just tried to numb myself to the reality that I was being forced into. I've had a couple jobs where I feel like that was the case.
Yeah.
But that's part of why I went into education, so I didn't dread work. Like a job in an office can tend to make people dread.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I'm made for it. Interesting thing that I found on Reddit too. So Selvig, that's an anagram that somebody figured out.
Really? Severed?
G, as in Gemma, who's his wife. G lives. So as soon as we get her name, you get a hint there that Mark's wife is actually alive. G lives.
That's impressive.
It might be a stretch.
I like it,
but
though.
I took it. Another character that I really liked, we only saw in one episode, was this Peggy Kincaid character, who was the first one to do integration successfully, and she's the one that ultimately is able to help Petey out. I was working with Petey at the beginning when he is trying to reintegrate himself. She's a Chicago actress, apparently, worked at the Shakespeare
Is that right?
theater often. Where do you think she's going? Because she seems to be the head of the rebellion. And she was willing to kill that guy so without a thought. The security dude that shows up looking for her.
Yeah, I think she knows how evil the corporation is, and she doesn't even think twice when she just sneaks up behind that guy. She's also like, all right, take your clothes, burn them. She's been
that
through
was
this.
a really horrific moment.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly for his Audi to have seen that and just started to get into this, oh crap, is something going on at Lumen that I don't know about?
And how great is it that security card is like the only thing that can go through the elevator?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so well written. I got to give this Dan Erickson credit because it is such a world unto itself. I guess like when Turturro had read the script and was offered, he was like, this is amazing. And I want Christopher Walken to be Bert. I want him to be my love interest in it. And a lot of people just point out too, you never really see, I guess maybe the exception a little bit in Gracie and Frankie, I guess they do it, but older gay men, sparking romance like that. I felt like it was really well done and interesting and believable.
Great representation of like what life is really like, as far as, like, okay, sorry, Hollywood, not every gay relationship on TV is going to be young, attractive.
Exactly.
It's real people.
Hitting a club every night.
Yeah.
But yeah, so speaking of Dan Erickson, people have asked him a lot about like what got you with this idea, where did it come from, sort of thing. I guess he used to work at like a door store, or he was a door salesman, and he just hated that job so much. But interestingly, I mean, just the metaphor there of the doors representing like two different worlds, I feel like that's great. That bled is really into this great, stellar concept.
People gotta
that
buy
really
doors.
Is so high level, but I think it is appealing to people, not because of the cast only, but because of the setting and just that most people. What percentage of people do you think hate their jobs?
Oh, 85% to 90%.
85%. Yeah, I think it's definitely over. I think it's 80ish for sure. I think that's accurate. Which is horrific.
Yeah, it's sad. It's too bad.
What happens though when everything gets automated and people have all the time in the world? What happens when they're not given that same sort of sense of purpose that these innies have? They certainly have a sense of purpose in the way the outies don't, and that ennui, that existential despair that they're feeling on the outside, leads them to wanting to sever that. Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky business because I feel like we do need some sense of purpose, but is a purpose that you hate?
Right. And I think it's brought up almost in the very first scene, is when we see Adam Scott pull into the parking lot and just starts crying. Because my first thought we don't know about the wife yet. My first thought was that, man, this guy must hate his job. He's crying before he goes to work. But is he crying because of that? Is he crying because of his wife? I mean, it's probably,
I think it's his wife.
Culmination.
It might be a combination of both. Yeah. I mean, it is sad. That to me is why it's horror more than anything else, is because we are forced to do so much in this life that we just submit to. Yeah. And that sucks. And that really, in the grand scheme of things, is pointless and kind of a waste of your time.
Yeah.
And that's the big bad. It's just wasting life, wasting your experience on this planet. I think, that's at the heart of why I find it scary, because that's what I aim toward not doing, is just wasting away.
And then like the swag throughout this series, where Milchek's like, you wanna, what does he say? He can get him, and he's like, I've got one right now. There's so
the melon party?
Not the melon party. There's so many. There's Christopher Walken's character's talking about the tote bag. When Dylan is holding the switches, and Milchek's trying to get into that door, he's telling him, he's like, you know what, we've got, it's like a coffee mug or something. He's like, we just got him in. I'll give you one right now. The idea that jobs think the idea of just even a perk might be something with their work's logo on it is just it's one, it's sad. Two, it's just wasteful to this planet. And three, it's like it's not an actual form of payment. Like, don't they know people just want to make money?
Yeah.
But no.
I know, and that's what's so sad is because they're not reaping the benefits of the work.
Mm-mm.
Their Audis are, and in most cases, it seems like the Audis have sucky lives as it is, except maybe
Right.
Dylan. Dylan's the only Severance that maybe I sort of understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Of the four, because he does seem to have a family, and maybe he's just like, I want to be a better dad, so I don't want to come home after slogging, doing a bunch of bullshit. I want to be the best dad I possibly can be for my kids. That's the only one where I might buy into how work could bleed into your Audi life in a bad way.
Missing out on family time. Yeah. And that scene was just so sad and scary too when the guy, he's like, I told you to count to 1,000. It's like, this poor little kid, no child is going to, it's just going to count to 1,000. But it's also, the most, like, just to jump off of what you just said, is that, like, there's no way Dylan can do his job now knowing he has a kid. He needs to know about his Audi's life more.
Yeah, I think that's what made Dylan no longer.
Yeah, it broke him.
Accepting. It broke him. It broke him the second that he said, "Wait a minute, I have offspring. I have a purpose beyond this stupid, scary number finding."
And with everything going on in the series, that was actually Lumen's fault. Like, they're right. You've got your employees trying to do things, but like, sorry guys, that one was on you.
Okay, that's a good point. Let's talk a little bit more about Lumen's behind the scenes, the board. What is going on with the board?
Well, yeah, I think the stuff that you've brought up, like the stuff that you read on Reddit, I think makes a lot of sense. This board could be state senators now. This could be like, it could be people pulling the strings.
I think there's definitely the one. I think it's a congressman who has his wife severed during her pregnancy.
Yep.
So she doesn't have to endure that.
And I think that's another good example of how they're not just trying to use severance for work. They're trying to use it for
in the grander.
Yeah, like you can block out pain in your life. No, I'm sorry.
I don't know. It's a tricky business.
But that's, I mean, that is who I think the board is. It's made up of rich white people. Yeah,
I think you're right. Do you think if Heli R and Heli E integrated, will Heli Egan, the Audi, overtake Heli R's Defiance?
Well, no. I mean, she's forced her to work there and immediately denied her process of termination. She has lived through a suicide now and doesn't seem to care. She just covers it up with makeup, and then the innie is like, this, you just tried to cover it up. I think it's more of a metaphor there too. Like, we're just gonna cover all that bad stuff up. And then when Heli's on stage and she's actually talking to those people, she's like, I'm an innie.
Yeah.
They
think she's joking.
Yeah. They think, but and she's like, they're, doesn't she say they're like abusing them down there?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
That's the sort of thing that I was scared was going to be put off until the premiere of season 2.
Yeah.
But we got it there. We got it there at the end, between John Turturro walking up to the door, Irving walking up to the door of Christopher Walken, and seeing that he has a lover in the outside world. And, you want him to be happy, but at the same time, you want to let him know what's been happening inside Lumen. And then, of course, you have Mark finally realizing that his wife is alive.
Yeah. That was a great moment. She's alive.
She's alive. She's alive. That was a beautiful, beautiful way to end it. And his sister's such an interesting character in herself.
They have a really great relationship.
They do. It's rare that you see such profound brother-sister relationships on them, but I think they did a really good job of that.
They did. And how amazing for a TV show to provide information and yet still have a cliffhanger.
So many mysteries still. Yeah. So many mysteries.
Also, what's really interesting is that Irving's character and what's Christopher Walken's character name? Bud or Bert? Bert, yeah. What an interesting thing, though, that you try to sever the personal life, and yet your romantic life or your sexual preference you cannot sever. You cannot sever.
Exactly.
You can't.
So this is the nature versus nurture argument, and it obviously says that nature is the reality here. I mean, our innate sexualities and who we are is innate to us.
Yeah, I thought that was a really fun, great first moment when they touch hands, and it's like that pinky.
It was cute.
It was.
We're such geezer boys.
I know.
It was still a very cute, touching
really
moment.
Rooting for them, yeah.
And then his retirement party is so heartbreaking when we do realize that
my God,
Christopher
that was
Walken
so
is
sad.
no longer going to be working there, and presumably because they had caught on to the fact that those two were starting to get a little too close.
They've got some really great physical bits with those when they put the tape in, and he's talking to himself over there, but he's standing over there. He's like, "There you are," and he's
yeah. No, they do a great job with that. Just the dichotomy of the people, bifurcation.
Yeah.
Of self. What would be your retirement song? The one song you'd want to hear at your retirement?
Well, I think first of all, the soundtrack to the series is really great, and they're pulling out
phenomenal,
some really great like 70s like deep cuts.
Yes.
I don't know. I have you thought about this? Do you have an answer for yourself?
I mean, this is my same karaoke song, Sandman. I'd have to go with Sandman.
That's pretty great.
It's so appropriate. Speaking of which, how about sleep? What about, because I'm obsessed with the dream business and all that shit. What is going on when they sleep? Who's dreaming? Are characters from the outie or the innies world the ones that are swirling in there? I feel like I'd love if they explored this in some way. Yeah,
there's got to be some sort of crossover. I mean, there's only so much your brain can suppress, and it's still there, That's a good question. I'd love to see that answered. I have one thing before I forget. Yeah. I have a question about the Bert's department. Dylan steals a card.
Yes.
And hides it in the bathroom.
Right.
What was on those cards? Because they looked like training, like self-defense training cards.
Okay. So this, I think, has a lot to do with training soldiers.
Yep. Okay.
And these are the things, because essentially they're going in there with a blank mind. So you have to train these soldiers that know nothing about combat into, your robotic fighting machine. So I think that is ultimately what Lumen does more than anything else, is it trains people to work for industry and or government in a grander scheme, without the pushback that we normally would feel as human beings.
Just missing one of those cards really made them freak out. That's what provoked the overtime.
Right. Yeah, I think that points to their grander operations.
They're building armies. They're building
armies of some kind, of multiple kinds. Because with the goats, then that makes me think that they're not just creating soldiers. They're not just creating great office workers, but also agricultural folks too. They're making the perfect slaves in every department. But certainly the most nefarious would be armies of severed. It's just robots then at that point. You have robot armies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just because of the time we've been alive, but whenever I see baby goats, I always think of cloning now. I think scientists, I think cloning.
Yes, you mentioned the potential for cloning action going on there. Yeah.
I mean, what are the chances, and this is just my own conspiracy theory, that Mark's wife isn't really Mark's wife?
Clone.
Yeah.
There's a strong possibility of that.
Yeah, and then they're still trying to see if the severed brain would recognize it. And so maybe Milchek's not a real person either. The innies who are like full-time innies might be clones of some sort.
That's interesting. Yeah, I could buy into that. That would make sense based on their just really strange natures too.
Yeah.
I mean, what it boils down to is I can't wait for season 2.
Same.
It just knocked my socks off, this show.
What an exciting show. I mean, it's so well directed. It's so well shot. I mentioned this in an email to you, I think, but the colors, the whole color palette seems like
New Age horror, you're saying.
Yeah,
I agree. We're monochromatic and
the blues, Yeah, really, really well put together. And oh my god, how cool is just the opening sequence? The
Opening theme.
The opening
is
credit
so
sequence
great.
is so good.
Yeah, no, I never skip through it because it's the music. I love the theme song. I remember
Theme song's
the
great.
first episode. It was just like
The
this
animation
theme song
is
rules.
brilliant. It's just I don't have any complaints about that show. And it's such a when you've got a show that just keeps pushing you to ask questions.
Then you know you got a winner.
Yeah.
And it's scary AF. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It definitely spooks me a bit because I don't want to end up a slave to somebody else's desires,
I just really hope, and this is kind of like the state of television. It's like, I really hope we don't have to wait like 2 years for a season 2. Some shows are great and they go right into production. They were like, all right.
At the same time, I don't want it to be rushed either. There is something to be said for like the Curb Your Enthusiasm approach, where it's literally when Larry David is inspired by an idea that would be good enough for a new season.
I mean, the good news here is that you said the creators got enough ideas for 6 seasons.
Yes. Yeah. I think season 2 is at least outlined. They know what's going to happen with season 2. So, I mean, I think it's done well for Apple TV. It was one of the first things that they picked up, and a lot of the casting was done pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Yeah, I hope they do get on it quick, but at the same time, don't rush, please.
No, I hear you. I mean, this time next year, I'd be happy.
And I do like that this guy, Dan Erickson, the creator, does go through the Reddit himself. He's the lurker, as he likes to call himself.
That's great.
So he likes to see what's working for the fans and where they want or hope or think or don't want it to go.
Right.
So definitely appreciate that, especially for a new guy on the block, man. Good for him.
Yep.
Crush it like this.
Yeah. If Apple's smart, they'll just hold on to him and let him do, if he wants to do other shows, let him do whatever he wants. Just let the guy
focus on this one now. Let's not spread him too thin.
I know.
But I'm just glad he's got Ben Stiller on his side, because Ben Stiller directed the best Jim Carrey movie of all time.
Hands down, Cable Guy is...
Cable Guy seems to come up in almost every one of our podcasts.
I know. That guy made such a dark comedy that also has tones of horror in it.
You're right. That's not a terrible idea. Do dark comedy horror cast. There's something to that. But I think we've tapped into Severance pretty well. And instead of saying stay alive, I'm going to go ahead and say stay yourself.
I like it.